This is R Orlofsky, and welcome to the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Whether you watch it with our friends over at Tony Time or wherever you watch or listen to your podcasts, it's so wonderful to have you along for the experience. And I know that I missed a week. I know. And I know there will be some discussion, wonderment. Where is he? What's going on? I'm going to answer that question. But first, I would like to point out that we have a sponsor, Jeffrey Seltzer, who writes, "Thank you for everything you do. I've been enjoying your shiurim since I first heard your shiur on the Gulf War when I was in Brandeis University in the 90s. Well, thank you very much for being a part of my life. And it's always an amazing thing when I get to meet people, because you may have noticed, especially if you watch this podcast, that I'm not shy about including details of my life, often to the consternation of my loved ones who meet people and say, "Oh, so are you feeling better? Oh, how's this going? How's the baby?" Which, by the way, I want to give a mazel tov to my daughter Rivka and my son-in-law Yisrael Meir Orbach on the birth of a little baby boy. Well, not so little, but a baby boy. Yeah, and he should have nachas from us, and we should have nachas from him, and alle gute Sachen. Yeah, so that's all good stuff. Yeah, but and I appreciate, I really do, the support that people give to be able to keep this thing going is really very special. So where have I been? The answer is supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. Was meant? So Mary Poppins says, "What do you say when you have nothing to say?" And she said, that's the purpose of that word, supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. And in fact, the father hears this and he thinks it's nonsense, but when he's being fired from his job at the bank, the only word that comes to mind is supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. Because that's what you say when there's nothing else to say. And so that is what I want to say today. Because we went through an entire year of a pandemic, a once-in-a-century event of thousands and thousands of from Yidden were killed, not to mention hundreds of thousands of people of all walks of life. Businesses were devastated. Communities were devastated. People had to sit alone for the Seder. People had to have their simchas by themselves. You know, some people allowed you to put together a bris for a minyan for a bris. Other people didn't. Really, really difficult time. Here in Eretz Yisrael, Baruch Hashem, we've turned the corner. Soon they're going to remove all of the restrictions. There are so few cases. Baruch Hashem, we've come through this, and so we're just coming at it. And I spoke a few times about the pandemic and trying to get some insight into it. And then boom, comes Lag BaOmer and 45 people are crushed to death in Maroon. I spoke about that in the last podcast. And I was looking forward to now getting back to speaking about Pirkei Avos, which is what we started doing. We did 2 shiurim with excerpt from the first parak, the second parak. So I was going to speak about the third parak. And then a war started. We're under missile attack. And not only are we under missile attack, but we're under the most vicious attack from the media. I mean, it's not unusual. This has happened in the past. Absolutely ridiculous stuff. Is there any country in the world that would get attacked by somebody would attack them and you criticize the country for defending itself? Someone beats you up on the street and you get into trouble for fighting back. Well, they said, well, you're stronger than they are. It should be proportional. They said this in the last Gaza war. Remember, Mayor Bloomberg was the mayor of New York at the time. He was being interviewed, I think, on CNN. They said, "Don't you think that Israel's response is not proportional?" So he says, "Proportional? According to that, if there's a gunman in the middle of Manhattan shooting at people, I can only send one cop. So I'm sending a SWAT team. I mean, proportional. You want to stop the person who's shooting. And if people are shooting missiles at you, you do whatever you have to do to take them down." The person didn't know what to respond. I thought it really summed it up nicely, but it doesn't make a difference. You can't talk to people. Hatred. Yeah. Fine. So the missile attacks have stopped and people have died, and terrible thing. And we come out of that, and now Jews are being beaten up on the street all around the world. People chanting, horrible, horrible. I can't even repeat some of the things. We want their blood. We want to see them dead. Hitler is right. Those are already the good things. Those things I can say. The worst things to say. People getting beaten up on the street from Yidden. So somebody said to me, "What do you say at this point?" And I say, supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. I don't know what to say. I said, look, I'm not a prophet. I'm going to put myself on the line here. I don't think Hashem's happy with us. Okay? I'll just put it right out there. I think he's kind of upset. That's what I draw. That's my conclusion from events. And if there's any indications, it's going to get worse before it gets better. Here in Eretz Yisrael, probably going to end up with fifth elections. And there's 2 or 3 parties that run. Their entire thing is to stop the religious Jews. Take away money from the yeshivas, close down the mikvos. It's like that's their whole platform. And we hate Netanyahu. Those are the 2 major pillars upon which many parties in Israel are basing their entire appeal to the public. But gosh, what's going on? So I said, I don't think Hashem is happy with us. Now, I have a daughter who follows social media. And she says, what? She says, you don't know. People are doing extra mitzvos. People are doing hafrashas challah. People are making tehillim groups. We're good. She says, we did what we have to do. And I said, yeah. I said, let me tell you a story. And I think I've told this story on the podcast already, but it definitely is relevant right now. Yeah. The Twin Towers went down in Elul. And that Sukkot, I went to visit Moshe Shapiro. And I'm always hesitant to call him my Rebbe, and he was very hesitant to call me his Talmud. So please, I see sometimes people use me to beat up on Rav Moshe, and I said, listen, the one thing that both of us understood was that I had at best a casual relationship, and I should not be seen as a spokesperson for Moshe Shapiro. But when I went to see him Sukkot, this is after the Twin Towers went down, and he said, "This is it. This is the beginning of Gog and Magog, and everything's going down." He says. So someone said, who was there, they said, but there were those who held that the Holocaust was Gog and Magog. He says, obviously not. Obviously not. And he used the phrase, it's always tricky with Rav Moshe because you have to understand what he's saying. You have to learn pshat. It's difficult when you're dealing with smart people because they say things and you have to really learn pshat. They're not self-editing because they're worried about cancel culture. They're saying the emes, right? So he says, Hashoah haya klum. The Holocaust was nothing. So the guy says, klum? So he said, The Ozer, it helped for the people who died as Kiddush Hashem. But it obviously didn't help for Klal Yisrael. So I said, how could you say that? Look at how many Jews today, their entire connection to the Jewish people is only because of the Holocaust. And he gave me one of those looks that he used to give me, and he would be like, Mato, man, Jewish identity. He says, I'm talking about Gog and Magog. It says when Gog and Magog comes, it says the Jewish people will do tshuva. And not tshuva like we do on Yom Kippur. He says tshuva from the top of your head to the sole of your foot. A total tshuva that's a life-changing experience. And he looked at me and he says, Dovid, Hayata Shoah, Asita tshuva? There was the Holocaust. Did you do tshuva? I think we both knew the answer to that question. He says, when this process is finished, then you will do tshuva. Someone said to me, oh, you got a bracha. I said, yeah. It doesn't sound like events are going to unfold in the most pleasant experience. The Gemara says, let Mashiach come, but let me not be there when it happens. Yeah. It's not going to be an easy time for the Jewish people. So, okay, so why? There are no problems in the Jewish community? There are no problems? Everything's great? We pat ourselves on the back? We're successful in every realm? Want to hear a terrible story? There was a two bus that blew up in Yerushalayim. And afterwards, they wrote up the vignettes of the people who got killed. Each person was a bigger tzaddik than the one before. So afterwards, certain people put up signs all around Gula, and they said, this happened because women wear sheitlach. Now, somebody went to, and I forgot if it was a Shmuel Auerbach or it was real Auerbach. I don't know what it was. So they told them, this is what they're saying. They're sending around sound trucks announcing it's because of the sheitlach, putting up signs for the sheitlach. He says, you think this happened because of the sheitlach? He says, the tears of the mothers who can't get their children into schools is enough to blow up 10 buses. Yikes. Yikes. And that's not the only problem. I'm not coming here to be Mekatrig on Klal Yisrael. I don't want to be the accuser. But listen, that's what one of the things we do on this podcast is we discuss problems. It's the only way you can reach a solution is if you discuss the problem. I'm not going to do that today. Because what is the cause? So those of you who are doing Daf Yomi, and I just want to remind everybody, I do a Daf Yomi online every day except for Saturday and religious holidays. Yeah, national holidays, we do it as well. Yeah. So my anniversary is June 14th, which of course is a national holiday, Flag Day. That's so we wouldn't have to fast. But we'll have share that day. 4th of July. Yeah, we'll have share. Unless it comes out on a Shabbos. Yeah. But we plow ahead. So the Gemara in Yuma just said, 40 years before the Churban Beis HaMikdash, the red string that they put around the goat that they sent to Azazel never turned white. It says when Shimon Tzaddik was Kohen Gadol, it always turned white. After that, sometimes it would, sometimes it wouldn't. But 40 years before the Churban Beis HaMikdash, it never turned white. It used to be that the Kohen Gadol put both his hands into the box to pull out the lots for the two goats, and if the one that said La Hashem came up in his right hand, it was a good sign. And all the time of Shimon and Tzaddik, it always came up in his right hand. After that, sometimes left, sometimes right. But 40 years before the Churban, it always came up in the left hand. It gives different other examples, and you find this in other places, 40 years before the Churban. That means that basically Kodesh Baruch Hu says, okay, this is cumulative. It didn't start yesterday. You want to turn around and find one thing. I mentioned this, I think, the last time, that they asked Rishon Bar Yochai, why were the Jews almost destroyed in the Purim story? And he says, because they went to Achashverosh's Suda. Now that to us should be pretty obvious. You read the book and you see it goes right from there into there. But those two events were separated by years. People didn't make the connection. What's been going on? It's been going on for the past 40 years. Us as a people. Klal Yisrael. So I'm not going to try to answer that question. I'm not a Navi. And I'm not big enough. When the Gedolei Torah all get together and say, this is what the problem is, I'll be happy to hear it. That's happened during history. After Tach V'Tat, they instituted the Mishaberach for those who don't talk during davening, because they said that's the reason that led to this terrible destruction. I would not have chosen that. They asked the Baba Sali why, for the main part, were Sephardic Jews protected from the Holocaust, and he says, because we don't talk in shul. Would I ever suggest that's the reason? Absolutely not. What's the cause? Where does it come from? In the Warsaw Ghetto, the Gedolim that were there got together to figure out which hate caused the Holocaust, and they came up with 10. Imagine you're in the Warsaw Ghetto in that situation, and your question is, why is this happening? So when my daughter tells me, I don't understand, everything's great. Everyone's so good now. They're saying extra Tehillim, they're doing Hafrashas Challah, Let's take a 40-year retrospective and take a look at Klal Yisrael and say, is there more Kedusha, holiness? Is there more Tahara, purity? Is there more Ben Adam Chavero? Are we treating people nicer? Have our midos increased and become better? Is our davening better? Is our Yiras Shamayim better? Is our sense of pride in the fact that we're Torah Jews stronger? If so, then that's great. Just forget everything I mentioned. Yeah, I don't know. I hate to say it, but based on these past events, Libi Omer, it's not getting better. When you follow the events, boom, 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 and one who likes to see patterns, we see a pattern. Sears. Yeah, I haven't seen a Sears in many years. But when I used to go to Sears, they used to have 3 grades: good, better, and best. We have 3 situations: bad, worse, and worser. I don't know what to say. I don't know what you say. So, like I say, I will keep my ear to the ground to see if I can hear the Gedolei Torah explain what it is we're supposed to be doing and how we're supposed to be doing it. I noticed the secular press misquoted Rav Chaim Kanievsky. I saw a story where they wrote, this happened, these tragedies are happening because women aren't sanua. That's not what he said. They said, what can we do? What can we work on? So he says, the general rule is that men should work on Limud Torah, women should work on Tznius, and everybody should work on the Netilas Yadayim. These are some ideas of what to work on. But he's not saying what the causes are. I don't know what the causes are. 40 years before the Churban already, it was clear that when Titus finally came and destroyed the Beis Hamikdash, it says he was grinding wheat that had already been ground. We destroyed the Beis Hamikdash spiritually before he destroyed the actual building. So this much is clear. Definitely time for self-reflection. So that's it. Unless I hear a big person say this is the reason that all of this is happening, I'm not going to speculate. I don't know. I can tell you I'm not big enough to offer any suggestions. I'm definitely not the one that anyone should speak to and say, oh, why are these things happening? I said, I don't know. But I don't think it's an indication that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is happy with us. I think it's sort of an indication that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not happy with us. And so the Gemara says if nothing bad happens to you in a month, you have to start to worry that maybe HaKadosh Baruch Hu just forgot about you. It's like, you know what? Do what you want. When a parent tells a kid, you know what, do what you want, I don't really care, that's not a sign of affection. That means I've just given up. I don't know how to get through to you. I don't know what to say. I've run out of options. So Baruch Hashem, HaKadosh Baruch Hu hasn't given up on us. So that's it. Those are my thoughts in the situation. That's why it's taken me a while to put this together, because I just had to think of something to say. And like I say, the only thing that came to mind was supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. Even though the sound of it is something quite atrocious. Yeah. So what can I do? What do you say when there's nothing left to say? Yeah. I remember I was at a tefillah kenes during the second intifada when Ehud Barak was prime minister. And Mendel Weinbach spoke. And he says, the prime minister, Ehud Barak, he keeps saying, if the Arabs do this, we'll know what to do. He obviously didn't. But he says, what are we saying, davening? We don't know what to do. We don't understand. We can't explain it. I don't have the Tanakh, the Chazal, the Rishonim, the Achronim. Nobody's explaining why this is going on. But let's put it this way. Every one of us use this opportunity to look into our hearts and figure out how I can make the world a better place, on whatever level it might be. So, with that as my briefest introduction, let's do something from Pirkei Avos. I did an excerpt from Aleph and Beis, and obviously a lot of Mishnayos here to talk about, in each one. I'm going to pick one from Perek. I'm going to go through all 6 Prakim, and then I may start again, unless I find something else I want to talk about. But otherwise, I might just keep pulling out little Mishnayos and ideas from Pirkei Avos. So I thought this one might be appropriate. Perek Shlishi. Rabbi Chanina Skana Kohanim Oimer Abi Mispalo B'Shlomo Shel Malchus. Daven for the kingdom. She'omole Moira'a Ish Esrael Chayim Below. Because if there wasn't a fear of the government, everybody would swallow each other alive. Chanina Skana Kohanim was during the time of the second Beis Hamikdash. The Romans were in charge. The Romans were not nice people, not on any level. Josephus writes that for entertainment, they would capture a Jew and try to get him to do avodah zarah and torture him to death, because they just can't believe that anybody would withstand that kind of torture just for belief. Who cares what you believe? When you're over at avodah zarah, it's very easy for you to switch your positions. Yeah. Would you give up your life for vegetarianism? So Judaism is just like some sort of a... Listen, if you're a Roman, you took all of your gods from the Greeks, you just changed their names. You took Zeus and you called him Jupiter. You took Athena and you called her Venus. You took Cupid and you called him Eros. And you just, switched all the names. You don't really care. You're not dedicated to any religious cause. The Christians finally decided to move to monotheism. They took a Yid and said, "Okay, you'll be our God." Take a God from the Yidden, yeah. So they're not nice people. And he says, Afal Pikain, daven for them. We daven for the Tsar of all the Russias, even though they were terrible anti-Semitic. Why? Because what we learned from Minneapolis is when you defund the police, so you end up with less policemen and more people get killed. In New York, when you defund the police, crime rates have shot up. The police are afraid. They're afraid to say or do anything because they do the wrong thing, say the wrong thing. That's it. They'll get thrown into prison forever. You have a system that favors the criminals over the law-abiding citizens. A mob comes into a private gated community, threatening violence. And a homeowner pulls out his gun to protect himself, and he's arrested. So if there's no government, then everything's going to fall apart. This is particularly important today. As I mentioned, my daughter, who follows all this stuff on social media, so she's a big Trump fan, In absolute terms, there's no question that there was never a better president for Israel than Trump. There's no question, just objectively. And that's why the Hamas would never pull the shtick under Donald Trump, because they know that he would tell Israel, bomb them, to smithereens. He doesn't care. That's why they didn't try this kind of shtick. But as soon as Joe Biden came in and said, yes, we're going to support the Palestinians, we're going to give them back funding, And they were like, okay, good. So now let's go back to our usual tactics of using violence. And then we don't care if we get killed. And then we'll become sympathetic. And then we'll demand more things from Israel, and they'll be pressured into giving it to us. That's what they've been doing for years. So there is a culture that has popped up of Joe Biden videos showing him senile, saying ridiculous things, doing ridiculous things, and not just Joe Biden, the people around him and his administration. And listen, Yesh Amel Daber. And my wife said to my daughter, I don't think that's a good idea. We Jews have always survived in Gullus by using the Mishnah that we just read, daven for the welfare of the government. If there's no government, it's going to get worse. At the end of the day, Joe Biden didn't do what AOC and Bernie Sanders said and cut off funding to Israel. He made positive statements about Israel. Okay, did he also take positions for the Palestinians that we think are no good? So what? He didn't turn his back on us. You walk a very slippery slope when you decide to throw your whole support against one side. My parents, when they grew up, and they were living in Long Island, so one registered as a Democrat and one registered as a Republican. So this way, whichever politician they were talking to, one of them would call. I'm a registered Democrat for many years. I'm a registered Republican for many years. It's kedai to see where the power base is going to be and figure out how you're going to use it to your advantage. Shtadlus, right, has been the Shtadlonis has been a character in Jewish history forever. You have to have access to the people in charge, and you destroy the government at your own risk, because the mobs that are out there already looking for us. Someone told me this past Shabbos there was an announcement in certain communities: don't go to shul. My goodness, it just came out of Corona. People can finally start going back to shul. They don't go to shul because people will beat you up in the streets. So you think that if they get rid of the government, they get rid of the police, you think it's going to be better for us? Yeah. When you say the tefillah, those who say the tefillah, you say the tefillah for the memshalah. You daven for the president and the vice president. Regardless of what you think of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, it doesn't make a difference. That's how the tefillah goes. We're concerned to make sure that as much as possible, listen, you work around it. Say tefillah for the czar. Whatever you want to say about the people in Bauer, they're not the czar of Russia. So you have to be careful what you say and how you act. Words and deeds count. They have manifestations. They have results. And if we put ourselves in the position where all we have to do is be critical, when Netanyahu made his big speech at the end of the war, he thanked Joe Biden and what he did for Israel and the support, and why? You think he wouldn't rather have Trump? Doesn't make a difference. You work with what you got. That's the Metzias. And so if you have the Tsar of Russia, you work with the Tsar of Russia. And if you have Obama, you work with Obama. And if you have Biden, you work with Biden. And whatever you got to work with, whoever it might be, you do the best that you can to daven and say, the Roman Empire. He was talking about the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire was not a good place for Jews to be. They were not our friends. The Gemara records a conversation. One of the Chachamim say to this Roman, he says, the only reason you don't kill off all the Jews because it'll make you look bad. They'll call you guys genocidists, but otherwise you'd kill us all. He goes, yeah, it's true. So that's what we discuss in closed door meetings. It's not kedai for us, but yeah, if we had the chance, we'd wipe you all out. And people aren't subtle. People saying this in the street, chanting it, driving down the street in America, in London, in Germany. This has nothing to do with Israel's foreign policy. It's to kill the Jews. So whatever else we do, ultimately we have to look at ourselves and we have to work on ourselves. But in the process, let us be smart. And let's look at the government wherever we're living and saying, I hope HaKadosh Baruch Hu protects this government, gives their leaders wisdom, and that they will have our best interests in mind. Because if they don't, listen, the Japanese were all locked up in internment camps during World War II. That was in America. Anyone who thinks that the Jews can't be put into concentration camps in America are not students of history. If they decide that we're enemies of the state, it's not going to be good. Yeah. And I don't know how much you feel about anybody in power, but do you want to be locked up in a camp with Bernie Sanders? Think heavily about that. Yeah. So that's it. The Chazal tell us we should be positive. We work to make change where we can. We work within the system as much as possible, but be very wary before saying negative things. It will reflect poorly, ultimately, on ourselves and on the Jewish people. There are many stories in history of Jews who worked hard to keep good relations, and ultimately it reflected well on the Jewish people. The reason Harry Truman recognized the state of Israel, he didn't want to, but he had a Jewish partner who put pressure on him, and he couldn't tell him no. That's why the state of Israel got recognized by the United States. And if you know that I'm able to maintain a good relation, I don't have to agree. I'm not talking about Hanifa. I'm talking about being nice and civil, speaking nicely. It's worth it. It's what Jews have done throughout history. We're avoid confrontation if we can, and especially in the present climate, when we need as much help and support as we can, we should daven for the welfare of the Malchus, of the government, because otherwise people eat each other alive. Okay, that's it for this week. If you want to find out more about the show, you can go to my website, RabbiOrlofsky.com. You can contact me. You can leave a message, comment on the episode. You can donate an episode and sponsor an episode, I meant. And that's what we got. So until next time, I'm David Orlofsky, and this is the Rabbi Orlofsky Show.
It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Torah and Simcha, ready to go. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Knowledge and wisdom will help you grow. Lots of fun in every episode, and we don't have to rhyme. No, we don't. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show on RabbiOrlofsky.com. Torah anytime, YouTube and more. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Torah and Simcha, ready to go. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Till next time, till we meet again. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show.